This is the burning issue on the happy world of 5FM radio, bringing you hot, smoldering topics on a weekly basis. Your participation is important.
Good morning, and welcome to yet another edition of the burning issue this week. And it's a Tuesday edition here on the happy world of 5FM radio. It's the 1st of October 2024, and happy new month to everyone listening into this particular edition of the burning issue. Remember, we are live here on the happy world of 5FM radio on 89.9 in Lusaka and the surrounding areas. Remember, we are also live on our partner radio stations, Tuta FM in Mansa, covering Wapula province on 90.7 FM. We are also live on Spice FM in Kabwe, covering the rest of Central Province on 91.1. Don't forget to catch us live on our Facebook page. Forget to also follow our conversation on our YouTube 5FM Zambia. Later on, I will give you, our listeners, an opportunity to call in and interact with our guest. And today we have a lot of issues to talk about, of course, ranging from the Constitution and proposed Constitution amendment. And also we'll discuss on the budget. But other than that, we'll also look at many other current affairs, yet very burning issues. My guest this morning, or before I introduce my guest, let me state that I'm your host, Zachariah Banda, and my guest today is president of the Patriots for Economic Progress, and this is Mr. Sean Tembo. It's a pleasure to have you on this program. We haven't had this conversation in the longest time.
Indeed.
Yeah, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Zach. Of course, a very good morning to all the listeners and viewers out there. Indeed.
Pep, I know that Patriots for Economic Progress has been quite consistent in a number of issues, especially with regards to the budget. We know that Patriots for Economic Progress have been very vigilant in as far as giving alternative budgets to this government and the nation. We also are aware that you will probably be issuing one again this year, following the national budget, which obviously Minister of Finance Dr. Stumbeko Msogotwane presented to the nation last week. We will get into the budget itself, but before that, we would like to find out how the Patriots for Economic Progress is doing in as far as mobilization. We know that you've been also consistent with regards participating in general elections, and we are sure that this coming general elections, obviously you are making necessary preparations with regards mobilization. Just brief us how that is going.
Yeah, the process of mobilizing a party is a very cumbersome process. It's very involving, and it's not one of those activities which you do once off and you feel you've done it, it's done.
Yeah.
I've got structures across the country, that's it. No. It's something that you constantly improve on. Because remember, Zach, that when you put people in the structures, you don't know them yet. You don't know them that well. You don't know how competent they are. You don't know how hardworking they are. So you sort them in, and then for us, the most sure way of testing their capability to mobilize in their respective areas is essentially to undertake an activity in that area. So, for instance, we would arrange just a mini rally covering a constituency where we want to meet all the structures and other well-wishers in that area. So the extent to which the constituency chairman is able to mobilize the people within a certain budget will tell us whether that is the right person for that particular job or not.
Right.
If we feel the person is not right for the job, then obviously we reshuffle them. And it's a never-ending process, so to speak. When we have, let's say, an activity, let's say a traditional ceremony, the way we went to Maraira in Malambo constituency, we tasked our constituency chairman to mobilize the people so I can get to meet and greet the people.
Yes.
And he did a very good job. We had more than 100 people there waiting for us to welcome us, to usher us And that to me spoke about the competence of that particular constituency chairman.
Right.
So it's a very cumbersome process.
Yeah.
I always hear people say, no, us, we already have structures across the country. People are dynamic. The fact that someone was committed last year does not mean that even this year they are going to be committed to party activities.
Yeah.
And you constantly need to check on those structures. Yeah,
Mm.
so,
but other than the fact that it's a complex process, will it suffice to say that the complex equally comes in financially as well? Because then there's this notion that for a political party to be successful, even on the ground, there must be money available for logistics and definitely other things, operations of the party at constituency or indeed ward level.
Indeed. The issue of cost, Zach, is something you can't run away from. But it depends on how much cost. You understand? And how much cost you're going to spend in mobilizing your members across the country depends on how much appetite they have for you and your party. You understand? If the people on the ground have high appetite for you, when you go there, they'll do most of the things by themselves. They'll put fuel in their own vehicles. Others will come by a motorbike. Others with a bicycle. They'll come. They'll mobilize themselves. So your cost in those instances will be maybe to buy some food, organize some food, and make sure people are fed while you are meeting them. After that, everybody goes with their own mode of transport. If the people like you and if you have momentum, both as an individual president and as a political party.
Right.
But if you don't have momentum and you literally need to force people, then people will demand for transport refunds. People will demand for all sorts of funny things. I know political parties in this country, even at the moment, and as well as in the past, who had their structures on a payroll. So every month they process a payroll as if they are running a company to pay salaries to their party officials. Because if they did not pay their party officials, the party officials would simply walk away because they don't have that appeal. For me, Zach, I'm not boasting, but I have a lot of appeal among the majority of the Zambian people. The people believe in what we stand for. The people appreciate our checks and balances. The people appreciate our alternative solutions. So wherever I go, for instance, when I was going to Eastern Province about a week ago, you have a tire puncture, you go somewhere, you want to mend the tire. The people identify you, Mr. Tembo, they mend the tire free of charge for you. You go in a shop, you want to buy water with your colleagues, you give them money, they identify you, are you Mr. Tembo? Yes. No, get the water free of charge. You understand? So it depends on your likability. It depends on how much political momentum you really have. And for me, I'm very grateful because a good number of people really like our party. They really like me, and I'm very grateful about that. Yes.
I'm trying to connect what you are saying to the name of the party. It's Patriots.
Yes.
Meaning that you must first be patriotic before anything.
Indeed. I must mention, Zach, that without patriotism as a leader, you can't achieve anything. And one of the biggest things that are lacking in the current Republican president, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, is patriotism. Before we even talk about competence, before we talk about accountability, patriotism lacks, And people might ask, say, Mr. Tembo, what exactly are you talking about when you talk about patriotism? Patriotism is simply the ability to put the interests of your country above any other interests. And when I say any other interests, I mean your personal interests, your family interests, your political party interests, and foreign interests. The interests of your country, Zambia, should come number one. So whenever the two interests are conflicted, let's say on one hand, you want to benefit your colleagues who helped to support your party when it was in opposition, who funded your party. You want to assist them. They are demanding that you give them tax holidays. On the other hand, the nation needs money. The nation requires every way of tax revenue. You understand? So you are conflicted there. On one hand, you are trying to please the people who helped you when you needed help in the opposition, who funded your party, and they are not demanding for tax holidays in the mines. On the other hand, The nation requires hospitals. They need to buy this. They need to buy medicines. They need to buy what? What do? You are conflicted. And whenever you face such a conflicted position, if you are patriotic, Zach, if you are patriotic, then you are going to choose the national interest, which is not to grant those tax holidays, despite the fact that that company helped your political party while it was in opposition. You understand? That is what patriotism is all about. And that part is missing in President Hakainde Hichilema. For President Hakainde Hichilema, Zambia comes last among his list of interests. And when you have a president like that, a country cannot develop. Simple.
But to the contrary, President Hakainde Hichilema has on several occasions spoken about how the Zambians should be first. And he has sounded this to his ministers or his officials. He said, we must, first of all, deliver to a Zambian out there. And he has demonstrated his patriotism in implementation of free education, for example. He says the free education is one indicator that he is a patriot.
Well, you are talking about speaking. I'll address the speaking part of it before I come to the free education, which in my view is not free at all. You understand? President Hakainde Hichilema always speaks, always says things, always makes promises. But the question is, does he implement those, the promises that he makes? He does not implement them. You understand? So the issue is, for instance, when you look at the budget, the 2025 budget, you will realize that when you talk about the tax reforms which are there, you see that the foreign investors in the mining sector continue to get tax holidays, which averages about 3.2 billion kwacha per annum, and that was announced in the 2022 budget, 3.2 billion per annum. You understand the tax holidays that are being granted to the mining sector. And yet, when you look at the 2025 budget, you realize that they have increased taxes for local musicians. Every time you are holding a show as a local musician, you need to pay to government 5,000 kwacha. Regardless of whether you are an upcoming artist or you are a well-established artist, you are required to pay. You understand? When you look at the private bus operators, they've increased their tax by 20%, the presumptive tax, by 20%. And we have all seen that private bus operators are struggling. To start with, there are too many of them. They are always fighting for passengers. If a bus manages to load twice a day for a local route, that is a very good day. Otherwise, there are no passengers. And people, because of the economic situation, people prefer to walk. And those who would jump on a bus, they won't pay the full fare. For instance, Matero would be maybe about 12 kwacha, but most people will say 5 kwacha. And buses are forced to correct that 5 kwacha for the Matero route, which is supposed to be 12 kwacha. So the public bus operators operate in very, very harsh conditions, not to mention the ever escalating fuel prices, where they increased by 4 kwacha and reduced by 7 tengwe. To create a perception that they are reducing. You understand? So for government to decide that they are going to increase presumptive tax for private bus operators, that is like punishing that particular segment of business people in this very harsh economy. And yet, in the same breath, they are giving $3.2 billion of tax holidays to mines. And we all know that the mines are owned by foreigners. So why should you prioritize foreigners over your own people? That is the question that I'm asking President Hakainde Hichilema. And that is the president, or rather, that is the question that you, the Zambian people, should be asking your president.
Already, you are giving me signs that we might as well start getting into the budget itself, because you've already started bringing out what's in the budget. But what I notice is you, as Patriots for Economic Progress, you've taken time to obviously study the 2025 national budget, and what you have described it in simple or one sentence is that it's unable to inspire the much needed economic growth.
Indeed.
Break it down for us.
Zach, when you talk about economic development, wherever in the world, it has to be private sector driven. Okay.
Yeah.
It cannot be government driven because, like they say, it's not the business of government to be in business. Government is incapable of running anything. Look at anything that government had tried to run, whether directly or through the Industrial Development Corporation, the IDC. Talk about Invest Trust Bank, for instance. Invest Trust, when Mr. Njovu, may his soul rest in peace, started that bank, it was very vibrant. It's one of the few indigenous Zambian banks, which was owned by a black Zambian. You understand? It was very vibrant. He grew the bank to great lengths. And the moment that, first of all, it was ZCCM Investment Holdings who bought shareholding in there. And then they kept increasing their shareholding. And eventually, when IDC was created, they handed over that shareholding to IDC. But the moment there was institutional involvement, both by ZCCM Investment Holdings and IDC, the bank kept going down. Okay, look at ZESCO. ZESCO, if it was if ZESCO shares were listed on the stock exchange, owned by Zambians, in other words, if it was privately owned by the Zambian people, it would have been very efficient, but it keeps on making losses. You understand? And when you look at the value chain of ZESCO, you realize that the biggest raw material which ZESCO uses is water, isn't it? Because more than 80% of the power that ZESCO generates is generated by hydro. And hydro, you've got the turbines which were fitted a long time ago, isn't it? All you need is water so that they rotate and generate the electricity. After they generate the electricity, the electricity is then transmitted through the transmission lines. Those transmission lines were put in place a long time ago. Every now and then they just need a bit of maintenance. Maybe pagwera chimtengo, chajuwako ntambo emozi, bajoin ntambo. Maybe they do some ground clearance, mwempita ntambo moja, so that muliro kayaka during dry season it doesn't bend the poles. It's just minimal maintenance. You understand? And then they come and sell the electricity to you. They go and sell the electricity to the mines at exorbitant prices. You understand? When you look at that value chain, because manzi are turning a mataba, they don't pay for it. It's free of charge. Yakugo mamba. Because of the lens. So why would ZESCO make a loss? That's the question. The bottom line is that there's a lot of pilferage, there's a lot of theft, there's a lot of incompetence, there's a lot of inefficiency, and so on and so forth. The bottom line, Zach, is if you are going to develop the Zambian economy, it has to be private sector driven. It cannot be public sector driven. Now, what is the law of government in a private sector driven economy?
Yeah.
The law of government is to ensure they create the necessary conducive business environment. Okay, what really constitutes a conducive business environment? Number one, policy consistency. Okay, when you as a government come up with policy, that policy should first of all be well researched and widely consulted before you arrive at a policy to say, this will be our policy going forward. You can't come up with policy today, tomorrow you revise it, the other day you go back to the policy. It can't be haphazard. So you need policy consistency, number one. Number two, you need to ensure that there is ready availability, steady supply and consistent pricing of key energy variables. So you need consistency of supply and steady pricing. What are the key energy variables? You are talking about electricity, you are talking about fuel. Those are the two key energy variables. So there you would want a steady supply, which means it's readily available, and also steady pricing, which means you are not fluctuating the pricing, so that the business community can be able to plan. Without steady pricing, the way they revise fuel prices on a monthly basis, the business community cannot plan. And these sentiments have previously been echoed by even industry associations, like the Zambia Association of Manufacturers, like the Zambia Association of Commerce, of Chambers of Commerce and Industry, ZAC, like the Bankers Association of Zambia. You understand? various industry associations and professional bodies have complained to government to say you cannot be varying the pricing of fuel products on a monthly basis. Businesses find it literally impossible to plan. So if I was president of Zambia, and when I become president of Zambia, I will ensure consistency of supply for all energy variables and consistency of pricing so that people can be able to plan. When you do that, you would have partially created the necessary conducive business environment needed for the private sector to thrive. What is another key variable needed to create that necessary conducive business environment? It is access to reasonably priced finance. And I want to underline the word, or rather the phrase, reasonably priced. Because the money which is there now, it might be there, ready for people to borrow, but it's not reasonably priced. It's too overpriced. When you go to a bank, the average lending rate will be around 28% to, if you go to microfinance and non-bank lending institutions, to about 40, even 45%. You understand? So if you are an entrepreneur in Zambia, you've got all these brilliant ideas, and you go to the bank, you want to borrow. First of all, there are a lot of hindrances to accessing finance. They will tell you they want collateral. You understand? And you're an upcoming business person. Where are you going to get the collateral? Maybe you just graduated from university. The reason countries like South Africa, the US, Israel, and so on and so forth are able to prosper is because their economy is able to fund the ideas of their citizens. People like Mark Zuckerberg would not have had Facebook if his idea was not funded. He didn't have anything. He was living in the garage of his parents. You understand? People like Bill Gates would not be the billionaires that they are today if their economy was not able to fund their ideas without asking for collateral. That is the kind of conducive business environment that we need here in Zambia if we are going to grow this economy using the private sector. If we are going to have a private sector driven economy, we need to have access for our people to finance, reasonably priced finance. Because like I said earlier, Zach, if you are borrowing at, let's say, 28%, 30%, what kind of business are you going to engage in for you to make a profit above that amount? Me, I'm an auditor by profession. I audit a lot of SMEs. And I can assure you, the average profit for a well-performing SME will be around maybe 20%, 22%. Nishi, washtamaning. You understand? The majority of SMEs make very negligible profits. The rest of them make losses, especially in this energy crisis. Most of them make losses. So you want to lend at exorbitant rates and you hope to grow the economy. You can't. Perhaps, Zach, the question that I'll ask myself, which I'll also answer, is why are our interest rates so high here in Zambia? Because here, even the monetary policy rate, which is the base rate, is at about 13.5%. You understand? The Bank of Zambia monetary policy rate is at about 13.5%. When you go to countries in the region, you'll find that the lending rate, I'll give you a few examples. You go to South Africa, the base rate there is around 6%. You go to Botswana, it's about 6.5%. You go to Namibia, it's about 7%. You go to Lesotho, it's about 5.5%. You go to Eswatini, which is previously Swaziland, it's about 6.7%. So the question is, why are our interest rates so high? Because it is these high interest rates that make people unable to access finance and that are basically holding down the growth of our economy, because people don't have access to finance. You need money to either grow a business or start a business from scratch. Yeah, the reason is simple, Zach. And the answer is in the budget. In the budgets of this country, not just the 2025 budget, but even the previous budgets, 2024, 2023, 2022. In that budget, on page 2 of the budget, the minister admits to say the current amount of domestic debt. When I talk about domestic debt, you are talking about the money that government has borrowed using Bank of Zambia. So Bank of Zambia is an agent of government. So government has borrowed a total of 225.5 billion kwacha at present. That's how much they've borrowed. You understand? From the economy. Okay. Now, our economy is not very big, and the financial institutions are not that many.
Mm.
The banks which are quite maybe just about 4 or 5. You've got Stanbic, Stanchart, Absa, and maybe Zanaco. Those are the really big banks. The rest are smaller banks. So for this small economy, when one player, government, borrows 225.5 billion kwacha, that's a lot. That's literally wiping out all the available money that the banks want to lend out. They've all lent it out to government. And government is using that money not for productive purposes, but for social purposes. You understand? The people who want that money, who want to access that money so that they can set up a business, they can open up a wholesale and employ people, they can open a brick making factory and employ people, are not able to access that money because the government has taken all of it. They've borrowed it through treasury bills and government bonds. Okay, so one of the policies of my government, should the Zambian people be gracious enough to make me their president one day, Zach, is to ensure that we cut on domestic borrowing. Assuming I become president at the time that the domestic debt is where it is 225.5 billion kwacha, the first priority of my government would be to make sure we cut that debt in by a quarter within a year, and another quarter in the next year, and another quarter. Within 4 years, we would have liquidated all that domestic debt. You know what the effect would be on the economy of that policy?
Yeah.
Banks, because they are not able to lend to government, all the banks and other non-bank financial institutions would have so much money lying idle. Okay, they would have so much money lying idle because their primary customer was government, and government is saying, no, we're not going to borrow from you. You lend to the economy. So they'll have so much money lying idle that they'll be phoning customers, asking them if they want a loan. So they'll phone you, Zach, and say, Mr. Banda, this is your banker calling from ABC Bank. Would you like a loan? And then you ask at what percentage, what interest rate? So we are lending at 18%, but we can give you at 17.5. You say, let me think about it. I'll call you back. And then you call her back in 5 minutes and you tell her, well, I can get your loan, but if you give it to me at 12%. Mr. Banda, let me talk to my manager. Then 5 minutes later, she calls you back and says, my manager says you can get at 12%. You know, so it will drive down the cost of borrowing and it will increase access to finance. If you have money, Zach, how many ideas do you have in your mind? Plenty, isn't it? If you had, let's say, 5 million in bank, can get a message, your account has been credited with 5 million. You've got a lot of ideas that you could do, isn't it? Yes. So the bottom line is that we need to change the policy. We need to change the way we run this economy so that the private sector can have access, number one, to reasonably priced finance, number two. Once that happens, the economy will grow by itself. And, you know, the thing about managing anything, whether it's a company, whether it's a country, when you implement the right policies, Zach, and when you hire people who are competent to run the government with you, you don't have to struggle so much. If you hire people based on competence, not at uyu muntu choka naye kumunzi kwatu, ni Tembo na eve, orachoka ku Eastern, orachokera kushipata. No. If you hire people, you look at their CV. What are their qualifications? What is their competence? It doesn't matter whether this person is a Lozi, this person is a Bemba, this person is a Tonga. You hire them on a fair basis, and you have a competent team. In these parastatals, you have a competent team. In cabinet, you have a competent team. I can assure you, Zach, the economy will just shoot like that. And you as a president, you will not be struggling at when you are addressing the media in a press briefing at State House, Urichena matemba, because nothing seems to work. Nothing seems to work, Mr. President, because you've hired your relatives to do jobs which are meant for competent people. You've kicked away competent people and hired your incompetent relatives to do those jobs. And that is why nothing is working. And that is why you always have tempers when addressing the media at State House.
Are you questioning the competency of the team at Ministry of Finance, for example? In this case?
Definitely. You know, Zach, us as Patriots for Economic Progress, we've been preparing alternative national budgets since 2017.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can write down the budget from 2017 up to now, the official budget figures, all the figures, line by line item, from my mind. You understand? I've studied the national budget. and inside out. And one thing I can tell you, Zach, is that there hasn't been any progressive change in the way the budget has been drafted between the two regimes. Nothing progressive. Nothing. One of the things that I used to complain about in the official budget when the PF were in government was the issue of this same issue of domestic debt and the fact that it crowds out the private sector. That was number one. That was one of the issues I used to complain about. I also used to complain about the issue of domestic arrears, whereby government, they get goods and services from the economy, but they don't want to pay for them. At the end of the day, they take years to pay people who supply them with goods and services. Mwapeleka binzi, kuzambia army, 7 years yapita, mkaribu 4. You understand? The issue of domestic arrears. And all these issues, domestic debt, for instance, has grown from about 89.5 billion kwacha in August of 2021, when the UPND took office, to 225.5 billion kwacha today. Domestic arrears, on the other hand, have also grown significantly from 18.5 billion kwacha in August of 2021, when the UPND took over office from the PF, to 78.9 billion kwacha today. And those figures are in the budget, Zach. They're in the budget. You can open the budget just on page 2 of the budget. Those figures are there. So what that means, let me just explain the domestic arrears part of it, because I explained the domestic debt part of it. What that means, Zach, is that government continues to get goods and services from the economy without paying for them. And the challenge with that, Zach, is that most of the people who supply to government, they borrow for them to fulfill those orders. So Boma ikakupasaka order, I'd supply 500 bags of beans to Chongwe boarding school. You not have that money. Maybe a bag of beans costs maybe 2,000. Of them, you require $1 million. You understand? So you go and borrow, and then you use your house or your vehicle as collateral. Wabwereka ndalama ija capital. Waendo gula beans wapeleka ku Chongwe boarding school. And then the government doesn't pay you. Not for months, but for years. And then where you borrowed the money, they pinda, then they just come and get your house. You end up being a destitute. So the question is, why should government accumulate so much domestic arrears, and yet at the same time they are also borrowing? Because if you are borrowing, it means you have money, isn't it? So why not use that money to pay your suppliers of goods and services? How is it that you are borrowing and yet you are not paying your suppliers? Where are you taking the money? And I've got an answer to that question. I know I've asked the question myself, but I'll answer it myself.
Where is the money going?
It's being stolen, most of it. It's being stolen. You want to challenge me where the evidence is? Just go and read the 2023 and 2022 Financial Intelligence Center Trends Report and look at how many illegal financial frauds went out of this country. For 2022, you are talking about almost 36 billion kwacha. For 2023, you are talking about almost 44 billion kwacha. You understand? So that is money which, according to the Financial Intelligence Center, said it left the country illegally. You understand? In other words, that is money that was siphoned out of the country. Now, Zach, I'll ask you the same question that I always ask people to say, in this economic setup where everyone is struggling and 44 billion has been stolen from this country and externalized, who apart from the UPND could have stolen that money? Would you have even $1 million kwacha in your account? Because me, I don't. You understand? Yeah. So the bottom line is that the people who have access to resources are the UPND. It is President Hakainde Hichilema, his ministers, his advisors, and his associates. Those are the people. So if we say 44 billion was stolen in 2023 from Zambia and taken out of the country, I've got no doubt in my mind that that 44 billion kwacha was stolen by President Hakainde Hichilema and his associates. I've got no doubt in my mind because the evidence is there. I mean, you can't blame the PF. The PF don't have that kind of money. They don't have access to contracts. They don't have access to any revenue. Most of the PF members, even former ministers, are suffering. Even kuma court every day. When I'm stoenda na mendo, wafika kuja court, ushtoona ati sana bwera na motoka ya bwera na mendo. manje azaichosa kuti 44 billion kwacha yakuba kuchosa mkanji.
You have also questioned the rationale, especially in allocation of 19 billion kwacha to defense and security, while only only a billion kwacha was actually allocated to procurement of medical equipment. Why are you questioning that? And I think that it has always been thought that you can't question the allocation to defense and security.
That's not the case, and it should never be the case, Zach. You know, Zach, at the end of the day, we have a country in which all of us are stakeholders, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which has a budget. When that budget is made, we need to look at all the needy areas. It's like a home. You understand? You can't have a home, mwana, your daughter, Sapato, inasira, on adiaga pansi, kunsi, the soil is completely finished. And she's a daughter, she's a girl. She's supposed to be looking presentable. It's not silly ratun sapato mwana, but you ya bwera wa fora wendo gula 65-inch TV. Mwana sumu yangana kutagura kon sapato. That is having your priorities upside down. You understand? It's the same under the current situation. We have people who are going without medications in these hospitals. In fact, it has now become a cartel, because the moment you go to a hospital, they write you a prescription, and there are a lot of famous outside there to sell you the medicines. So, meanwhile, you're paying NIMA, you're paying for the service, but you're not getting the service. You need to go and buy the medicines again. So, while people are dying due to lack of medicines, why should government be spending billions of kwacha buying guns and ammunition? Why? We are not in a state of war. We are not. We are not in a state of war. We have reasonably stable neighbors. So why can government prioritize the needy things? Buy medicines so that vantu kufa prematurely. Vantu wakaenda hospital. First of all, Zach, problem most of these government officials, some of us, we like to visit. Tumaenda incognito, waenda paka kliniki, you meet the people there, makamba nao, wakuza ma problem. The majority of patients, Zach, oroija gurira card, 5 kwacha. 5 kwacha. To you and me, 5 kwacha might appear to be nothing. But people struggle to raise 5 kwacha to open a card. Okay. People struggle to look for even 100 kwacha so that they can register for NIMA. Okay. Now, people who are struggling to pay 5 kwacha, you also gurira card per clinic. Asegura card vamukongolesa 5 kwacha waneba, asegura card aenda pa kliniki, vamuyangana wa doctor, vamulembera prescription ya mankwala yamenyaza kosinga 500 kwacha kugula. Muntezo struggling akusakira 5 kwacha kutagure card, azaichosa kuti 500 kwacha kutagure mankwala. That's being unreasonable. And in the midst of all that, you are spending 19 billion kwacha to buy guns and ammunition. Who do you want to shoot? Who do you want to shoot? Because the biggest threat to this country is hunger and poverty. And hunger and poverty requires you to produce food so that you can feed the people who are hungry. It doesn't require guns and bullets, no. What? Is that the objective? That shouldn't be the case. So the priorities must be set right. And also on the issue of medical equipment, the current government, led by President Hakainde Hichilema, when they were in opposition, they strongly condemned the previous regime on the issue of sending people abroad for medical treatment, sending people to South Africa and India for medical treatment. You understand? And they promised us, the Zambian people, they promised us that should they ascend to power, they will make sure they buy the necessary medical equipment so that people, the Zambian people, can be treated locally. You understand? Because we've got competent personnel. We have the necessary competent doctors. The only thing missing is medical equipment. And President Hakainde Hichilema ascends to the office, and then what does he do? He prefers buying guns and bullets instead of buying medical equipment so that people can be treated locally. And under the current regime, we've got the largest number of people being sent out of the country for treatment. If they were at least reducing the number of people being sent for treatment and buying the equipment, then we would say, okay, they will gradually cut it down. we are making some progress. We are not yet there, but we are making some progress. That's what we would have said. But the number of people, most of whom are President Hakainde Hichilema's relatives and kith and kin, who are being sent out of the country is tripling. It's tripling. So there's no progress being made. So that is where the source of our consternation in that misguided priorities in the budget came from, Zach.
I'll come back to the budget. Let's take a bit of some digression here. Let's go to the issue of the 3 suspended judges
Yes.
at the Concord, right? And this brought out quite a lot of talk. I know that as Patriots for Economic Progress, you did also state what your position is and how unfortunate the decision was. But then, what does this mean in as far as our judiciary is concerned?
Well, for me, Zach, unfortunately, I heard an unpopular view on this matter of the suspended judges.
Yeah.
I do not sympathize with their suspension, unfortunately. And I'll express my reasons for that.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I've appeared before the Constitutional Court, I think more than 13 times on different matters that we've taken to the Concord. I think 3 of those matters, it was as the Concord was previously constituted before the new appointments by President Hakainde Hichilema, the original judges, who were there. And then about 10 other cases under the newly reconstituted bench. And my view is that, those 3 judges, maybe with the exception of Judge Mugeni Mulenga, the other 2, Paran Mulonda and Study, in my view, they were not objective. They were too pro-UPND, as a matter of fact. And you could tell that in their rulings, they were not objective, well-reasoned rulings, in my view. So when they were first appointed at the bench by President Edgar Lungu, they might have been pro-PF. But subsequent to their to President Lungu losing power, they totally turned and became pro-UPND. Among those 3, the only one that I would have sympathy for is Judge Mugeni Mulenga, because she remained objective, in my view. The other 2 weren't objective. They were very pro-UPND. And if President Hakainde Hichilema suspended those other 2 for fear that they might interfere with or they might compromise the judgment on President Lungu's eligibility, I think it was unnecessary, because those were already pro-UPND. There's no question. Just like the other judges who've been appointed by President, Hakainde Hichilema, with the exception, perhaps, on the newly appointed judges, with the exception of maybe Judge Kawimbe. In my view, Judge Kawimbe is very objective. But the others, they are too pro-government. And I'm speaking this from my personal experience, based on my interaction before that bench. Yes.
So then, are you worried that former President Edgar Lungu's eligibility case has been met by these suspensions? I mean, and I think that there was a lot of talk to say now everything was looking premeditated.
Yeah, because it shows the overreach of the executive on the judiciary. So it sends very bad signals, especially if the Constitutional Court was to rule against President Edgar Lungu on the eligibility case. It would show a clear hand of the interference of the executive on the judiciary. There's no question about that. The writing is really on the wall, really. Yes.
So if you feel like the judiciary is being ripped apart by the hand of politicians or administration, does that worry you equally on the Constitution? I mean, there are already proposed amendments to the Constitution following observed lacunas.
Under the current regime, Zach, unfortunately, not only has the judiciary been compromised, but the majority of state institutions have been compromised. The majority, I would say 99.99% of the state institutions have been compromised by President Hakainde Hichilema and his administration, which is very regrettable. Starting from the Office of the Auditor General, who are supposed to provide checks and balances on government accountability, it's compromised. You go to the Office of the Public Protector, compromised. You go to the Anti-Corruption Commission, compromised. You go to the Drug Enforcement Commission, compromised. You go to the Magistrates Court, compromised. You go to the High Court, with the exception of few selected judges who've managed to stand up and maintain their integrity. It has been compromised. And then you have the Court of Appeal, except certain forums or quorums which might be created by a few objective judges at the Court of Appeal at the Court of Appeal level. The majority of the judges at Court of Appeal is compromised. You talk about Constitutional Court with these new appointments by President Hakainde Hichilema is totally, completely compromised. The only place where there is some semblance of integrity in terms of a judicial system at the moment is perhaps the Supreme Court. That is the only place, in my view, where there's some semblance of integrity. Otherwise, the entire judiciary is completely compromised.
Among government institutions, do you include the ECZ, the Electoral Commission of Zambia?
Definitely. There's no question about it. Some positions, Zach, you need the people, you need them to be headed by people who are beyond reproach, people who cannot be affiliated to any party whatsoever. When you look at the majority of the commissioners sitting as commissioners on the Electoral Commission of Zambia, you realize that a good number of them are well-known, well-established, well-documented UPND supporters. You understand? Some even stood as candidates on the UPND ticket. Others, when you go to their Facebook profile, you go maybe about 6, 7, 8 years ago, you find pictures where they were wearing UPND regalia. You understand? So such an individual cannot really be considered to be independent. How can you be independent when there is evidence that you are wearing UPND regalia and now you are sitting on the commission of the Electoral Commission of Zambia? Clearly, the Electoral Commission of Zambia is compromised. There's no question about that. You understand?
Yeah. Do you then foresee problems 2026 general elections? That said?
Yes. But Zach, I can assure you that when the Zambian people want change, they get change. There's no question about that. When the Zambian people want change, they get change. It doesn't matter what kind of obstacles you put in their way, they'll get the change that they want. So in 2026, if the people want change, the people will get change. And I've got no doubt in my mind that the Zambian people want change in 2026. I'll give you an example. In 1991, the general elections at that time were organized by an electoral commission that were partially UNIP members and partially ECZ members, commissioners, you understand? The police was 100% backing President Kaunda. The intelligence system was 100% backing President Kaunda. Everything was intact. And yet, President Kaunda still lost the election. So, when you're in that chair, and, my wife always tells me that when you become president and you start misbehaving, I'm going to leave you. Because there's something wrong about that chair. You understand? When people get to that chair, the chair of being Republican president, they feel invisible. And they are always cheated by the people that surround them. So I've got no doubt in my mind that President Hakainde Hichilema has been cheated by those around him to say, 2021, single vote. We're going to swing
2026.
2026, single vote. We're going to swing the election. It doesn't matter that the people are complaining on the ground. It doesn't matter that you've lost ground. We'll be able to swing the election in your favor. will rig the election for you. You understand? And they even provide the plans probably to him, say, this is how we are going to do it. And when you are in that position, you believe until the time comes. And you find that all those to my plan, to pa paper, to solid 100%, you try to implement to my plan to a kanga. Then you are on the way out. And you need to be held accountable to the Zambian people. It's time to be held accountable. And, because if President Hakainde Hichilema was serious about winning 2026 elections in a genuine way, he would have been making an effort to resolve the problems facing the Zambian people. But he's not making an effort. You go to his Facebook page, every now and then, he's even laughing at us. He just posts emojis laughing at us, the voters. So you are laughing at the voters. The only reason that President Hakainde Hichilema can laugh at the voters is because in his mind, he believes that your vote doesn't matter, that he's still going to rig the elections regardless of how you vote. But I'm here to assure the president, I'm here to assure Mr. Hakainde Hichilema that all his rigging plans will not work on the 13th of August, 2026. They will not work.
I've got an interesting message on our Facebook page that I would like to read it. It's from Sage Matthews. Sage Matthews says, we expected this recent budget to redeem us. Unfortunately, things seem to be fixed. As Pep, what's for us, the youth, who can't find employment after graduating 5 years ago, if we vote for you this 2026? Any industrial plans? And my last question is, when are we going to have a smart city? Right? He goes on much earlier. He sent another text which says the current budget was supposed to redeem us. Right. It's the same message, actually. He sent it twice. Apologies. Yeah. So basically, that question takes us back to the budget, because I also did promise that we'll get back to the budget. I mean, what do you feel about Sage Matthews?
Yeah, the sentiments of Mr. Sage Matthews are the sentiments of the majority of our youth today. Those are the questions that the majority of our youth are actually asking. And the answer to that question, Zach, is economic reform. If the Zambian people make me their president, I'll address the issue of youth unemployment, but not only youth unemployment, general unemployment, in two ways. Okay, in two ways. Number one, you must remember that in terms of our population, a small segment of our population might be educated, and those can be able to look for a job. But there are other members of our society who have never been to school at all.
Yeah.
So when you are coming up with a plan for employment, you need to cater for both the skilled manpower and the unskilled. And the unskilled constitute more than 80% of our total manpower base. Only 20% are skilled. You understand? Yeah. So the approach that we have is to ensure that people can be able to employ themselves. So our focus is going to be on entrepreneurial development. You understand? Entrepreneurial development, because whether you've been to school or you've not been to school, you can still learn a business of some kind. So the question is, what do entrepreneurs need? What kind of support do they need from government? In our view, entrepreneurs who are upcoming require two types of support. Number one is the natural access to reasonably priced finance. Okay, when you look at institutions such as the Citizen Economic Empowerment Commission, the idea is good on paper. It's very good, but the actual implementation is very wrong. It's very wrong in two ways, which we are going to correct when we form government. It's wrong, firstly, in the sense that money is only given to ruling party supporters. And then that money is not even recovered. It is like a gift to ruling party supporters. So there is no revolving fund. It's a one-way flow of cash, out, always out, never in. You understand? And that problem was there even under the previous regime. We are going to cure that. You will not need to belong to PEP or even support PEP for you to access funds under my government. all you need to have is a green NRC. You just need to be a Zambian. That will qualify you to access youth empowerment funds under my administration. As simple as all that. And when you access those funds, you will be required to pay back that money so that it can help others. Once you have a two-way street, that's why it's called the revolving fund, then it will be sustainable. When you have a one-way street, it's not sustainable because you keep dishing out money, it's not coming in. So we are going to address that. The second part that is wrong under the current model of the Citizen Economic Empowerment Commission is the sizes of the loans that are given out. So instead of giving really, really small loans to a lot of people so that a lot of people can benefit, they give big loans to a few people. Why would you give someone 40 million kwacha under CEC for them to go and set up a lodge in Siavonga? Why? If they have such a big project, let them go to the commercial bank. CEC is supposed to give small loans. You start by giving as little as 2,000 kwacha. Makombo numu wantu azafuna ati amboshoka kwa vitumbua payadi ola ambopimisa kwa malasha so amafuna ndalama zambili manini ola ambogulisa kwa manzimbe. So you give someone minimum, you start minimum 2,000 kwacha mwapasa, and then if someone is able to repay, you make it flexible. Alipira ngati mwampasa 2 pini alipirako every week and olipirako nango 300 kwacha. Every week 300 kwacha. Every week 300 kwacha. Akasiriza kulipira ija 2 pin. Then muona tu yali serious na business. Mampasako 5 pin. Ashta grow business. 5 pin alipira maybe every week alipira kapela ni 400 kwacha. 400 kwacha every week. Asiriza kulipira ija 5 pin. Mampasako 10 pin. You can't just start boom. Mundu mampasa 50 pin. You've got no track record kutu you are nashtapo business as ashtabwino business as abweza ndalama mumpasa cheza mbili at once. You can't. So we are going to improve the way that CEC is run so that a lot of people can benefit regardless of their political party affiliation. The second reform we are going to implement, Zach, in terms of helping entrepreneurs, especially among the youth, is to provide mentorship. You provide mentorship. Money alone is not enough to help these young entrepreneurs. You need to provide mentorship to them. So under my administration, we are going to set up offices across the whole country for Citizen Economic Empowerment Commission. The way you have police stations and police posts widely distributed, such that mukachana che assault na madam fast madam waenda pa police report. That is the way CEC offices are going to be. So that people can easily walk to an office and remit their payment to pay back, and go officers from that CEC office can visit the various entrepreneurs in their area. Alliance ashta monitor. Because the challenge, Zach, is that most of these entrepreneurs, they will run a business when it is small. They will run it successfully. They will run maybe up to maybe a turnover of maybe 50 pin or 100 pin per month. And then the moment they decide to open extra branches, the business becomes confusing. And a business which was very vibrant, nisharina shop shabe mozi, manja awasegura mashop yari for that business, they fail to run it. So what they need is mentorship so that they are guided. And also you need that graduation from being in the informal sector, which is where most people start from when they are entrepreneurs, informal sector whereby they are not registered with PACRA, they don't have a bank account, they don't have a tip-in by Zachariah. So you need to be able to gradually migrate these people from where they start, which is in the informal sector, to the formal sector. Momsta guide mundu iwe vera business yako pamene yafika hapa enda ku PACRA uka segulise company, limited liability company, then ukasegule na ka bank account, then ukachina register ku Zachariah, so that you can also ungazinganisako tumatenda twa CDF or twa ku government. You understand? Someone is able to graduate. Of course, someone cannot start with all those things because they are too expensive to comply with. So it's inevitable that when they start in the informal sector, but at some point they need to be able to graduate. And they can only do that with mentorship from CEC. But the biggest challenge now is that CEC just throws money at people, most of whom are ruling party cadres, and they sit and then people are not paying back because you are not creating environment to allow people to thrive and prosper so that they can pay back.
Great. We should be opening the phone lines now on 0955 for those that would like to take part in our conversations this morning. And of FM is on 91.1 and covering the rest of Central Province. We are grateful that you have continued to follow our conversation as well live on our Facebook page, and that is 5FM Radio Zambia. Now, before I take that first phone call, allow me to ask one crucial issue, which I've noted that the Patriots for Economic Progress has indicated that you are so worried at this government insatiable appetite to continue borrowing. And you've broken down how much they've borrowed.
Indeed.
Just share with the listeners what you mean.
Yeah. So the issue of over borrowing, Zach, is an issue that we used to complain about a lot, even under the previous regime. And I'm very surprised why people are very quiet under the current regime, despite the fact that the current regime is borrowing at a far much higher rate, at a far faster rate than the previous regime. I don't understand that part. And under the previous regime, Zach, we were able to see some infrastructure which was coming out of that overborrowing. Under the current regime, we can't point at anything. You understand? When you look, there are basically three types of debt that we refer to in our press statement. The first one is foreign debt. Foreign debt went up from about $11 billion, where the current regime found it in August of 2021, to $14.1 billion. And those figures, Zach, I want to emphasize that those figures are in the budget. If you go to page 2 of the 2025 budget, you'll find those figures. So in case anyone wants to question the figures, go to the budget, you'll find the figures. So an increment of $3.1 billion within 3 years,
right?
$3.1 billion. And then you talk about domestic debt. Domestic debt, which is treasury bills and government bonds, has increased, has more than tripled, Zach. It has increased by about 252%, because when the UPND came into office, domestic debt was 89.5 billion kwacha. Right now, domestic debt is 225.1 billion kwacha. Again, those figures are in the budget.
Justification, does it truly justify on the fact that their argument, the UPND government argument, is that they are borrowing cheaper loans and not, as was the case with the previous regime that borrowed on the market and they're expensive loans?
I wouldn't agree with that, Zach, because when you look at the Eurobond, we got the Eurobond at about, the first Eurobond at about 4%. Okay. When you look at the IMF loan that the New Dawn got, that $1.6 billion, they got it at 2.5%. And then because of a default, they were penalized. I don't know if you saw that statement from IMF. They were penalized. They added 1.7% to that 2.5. So the IMF loan, as we speak right now, is at 4.2%. which is far higher than the first Eurobond that the previous regime got. So that argument, in my view, does not hold water. It doesn't hold water whatsoever. So I was documenting the loans. So you've got domestic debt increasing by about 135 billion kwacha, which even if you divide by 26 kwacha to the dollar, if you want to convert it into dollars so that we can add them properly, that would give you about $5.2 billion or so. Okay, and then you've got domestic arrears, which was 18.5 billion kwacha and is now 78.9 billion kwacha. Again, those figures are in the budget. You go to page 3 of the budget, you'll find those figures. It's now 78.9 billion kwacha. That's a huge increment. You're talking about 2 almost $2.4 billion if you convert using an exchange rate of about 26 kwacha to the dollar. So in total, the UPND within 3 years have borrowed a total of $10.7 billion. $10.7 billion, which is almost the same as what the PF borrowed in 10 years. And for the PF, we were able to see the infrastructure they built. The face of Lusaka changed. We saw Levi Mwanawasa hospital being put up. We saw the new international airport. We saw it's there to see. But under the UPND, there's nothing, in my view, to point at. Literally nothing in terms of infrastructure development, apart from those toilets that President Hakainde was commissioning in Kwacha constituency in Kitwe. Other than those pit latrines, President Hakainde Hichilema should tell us where he's taken this $10.7 billion. He should tell us. Because on one hand, Zach, when you are borrowing, like I told you earlier, when you are borrowing, you would expect government to be clearing its bills. Okay, like the goods and services that the suppliers are supplying to it. Because you are borrowing, you've got liquidity, you have cash. So you would expect these bills to be cleared. But on one hand, government is borrowing at a very fast pace. And then on the other hand, government is not settling its bills. And the bills are accumulating at a very fast rate. From about 18.5 billion to 78.9 billion. That's a lot. It's like everyone who is supplying you with goods, you're not paying them. Wakpasa order, wakpasa tender, supply mini meal to Mlowezi boarding school. You go and supply 100 tons of mini meal, so could repair. You know what I'm saying? That is how that debt is growing. And yet, on the other hand, they are borrowing money from using Bank of Zambia, treasury bills and government bonds. So where is the money going? Other than what we are seeing in the Financial Intelligence Center report, trends report of 44 billion kwacha illegally being externalized out of the country. So it's like they are borrowing so that they can steal the money and take it out of the country. And I ask myself, these people do, Kuba Zaki, kubako kuja, where you want to hide. You are stealing, but you want to hide so that no one catches you. And then kulikuba kuja kwinango kuja, kwako that you don't care. It's like you are planning to run out of the country. You understand? Ukukuba kwa mene machita wa UPND ni kuja kwa I don't care. You understand? So kuba kuja kuba kwa kuti aba abisapo pamine aba paja so that pasaoneke, so that wantu pasaone at abapo. They are very brazen about it. They are very blatant about the way they go about stealing the resources of this country. And the Zambian people should stop being quiet and begin to question their leaders. We've got those press briefings that the media attend at State House. But most of the journalists, I get very, very disappointed. Very, very disappointed. They are very apologetic. The way they ask questions. Very apologetic. Very apologetic. Why the hell do you even go to State House to attend a press briefing if you are not going to ask questions? If you don't have a backbone to ask the president questions, why go there? That's very disappointing. Me, I'm very disappointed with the majority of our journalists, except a few who have a bit of a backbone, like this boy for Diamond TV. I always forget him. Which one? Huh? Not Jonah. There's that other, the reporter who is always in the field. I'll remember him. That boy, and these days they even skip him. They don't give him an opportunity to ask. Darius, yes, Darius Chona. They even skip him. They don't give him an opportunity to ask questions. Every other journalist, they're very apologetic when they're asking questions. Next time, Zach, even you, if you attend any of these functions, challenge the president to say, I was with Mr. Sean Tembo on radio the other day, and he says you've borrowed, in dollar terms, you've borrowed a total of $10.7 billion since you came into office. Mr. President, sir, what have you used this money for? Because Zach, I can assure you, ka economy monga katu ka Zambia, mukangena even $3 billion infrastructure, paoneka. Manje $10.7 billion, iri kuti, wanapeleka kuti. What did they do with this money? Because they are not even able to pay their bills. Wanapeleka mabinzi kuma boarding school, so avalipira. Mandalama iya mene wana borrowing, inaenda kuti.
Let me ask the listeners now to call in and interact with you on 0955-221515. And please also feel free to leave us a comment on our Facebook page, and that's 5FM Radio Zambia. Let's pick this first call. Good morning. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for calling. Your name and where you calling us from?
Yeah, this is Lusaka. Good morning, President Sean Tembo.
We didn't get your first name again?
This is King Fred.
Yes, King Fred.
Good morning, President Sean Tembo.
Good morning, Mr. Kingfred. How are you?
In Sarava Kalamba, Narava, we know Baba Shopumwandi for the past 2 months. Shatara Monapama. Then you expect the economy to grow. First and foremost, Mr. President Sean Tembo, want to understand something. You are a former police officer. What does the law say if we Muntunga in a police officer in uniform? You can see the video which is circulating on the social media. Yesterday in town, the UPND does this type of police officers. A police officer was just controlling them. That is how they started beating Kumusenda Kuraku, office Kumiavo. What does the law say? And to make matters worse, Leah Munga is very, very quiet. But in the Nakashinda and Gakoso Mugosha, Ivanava Mulembera call out. And then the second thing is Sean Tembo. Me, I don't trust the ECZ. When I see the ECZ, I just see as if it is a political party. So as for me, I'm not going to accept the result which they are going to pronounce in 2026 if CHS is going to win. Lastly, Mr. Sean Tembo, want to find out Apama NGOs, Nava Talala, we can see them how they have been victimized, Parapa, court that they have with the Jibriti, Yavad Gashagolongo, Champo Kulava pushing as it is Kevana Keva Fiash. We say Lamulanda Shanuka Koti Maturefo Mukufako Mulan. Kubula more than 5,000 police officers just to victimize the Ama citizens. Ngamatimu kushamu PNG. Vale sa full by PNG pakoti no kutampo kulato ama grasi ya pakoti para bajavia basi nene kato fear kutoa mawendo pakoti para.
Thank you. Thank you, King Fred. Thank you very much. I'll take another one on 0955221515. Good morning. Hello.
Bazaki.
Tauka Mwakabwanje.
President Tembo, how are you?
I'm very well, sir. How are you?
I'm okay. You are speaking to Dr. Chikubabe.
Yes, Chikubabe.
Yeah. President Tembo, you are speaking very, very well. Very, very well. You are speaking very well. You are speaking for the poor Zambians. You know, Mr. President, this country now, it is at risk. There is few people, Zambians, who are able to see where we are going like you, like the way you are explaining. If you can look at the country, monies which we are losing, monies which are going out, billions and billions of dollars, billions and billions of quarters, while there is no money in the secretion. And you find that people are saying, where are we going as a country? That question was asked in Parliament to Madam Vice President. Do you know that the Nakonde member of Parliament asked our Vice President, why were you lacking the PF when the FIC report came to 2.2 billion? You are telling that these people are criminals. What happened to you now? The FIC report is going to 13.5 billion, such huge sums of money. I was shocked when I heard the answer from our Republican Vice President, just because of inflation has gone high. Is that the answer whereby a reasonable answer, people of Zambia, they can understand that these people, they are stealing billions just because of inflation has gone high? Very disappointing. I'm sure as a country, let us be very careful, Tembo. Let us start protecting our country. This Zambia is now at risk. It has risk. Look at the budget now. Instead of allocating huge sums of money to agriculture sector, but they are busy allocating billions to the so-called the forest. As a country. If you can look at the three arms of government, the way to operate, it's very, very compromised. Look at the South side. Today, if you can hear the parliament, it's not in the parliament what we know. Since I was born, out of all successive parliaments, this is the worst parliament in the history.
Thank you, Mr. Chikubabe. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming, indeed. Maybe because there were a couple of questions from two individuals, I will let you quickly respond, then we'll take another set.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So Mr. Kingfred was asking about the beating of a police officer who was assaulted. And I actually saw that video as well. It's been trending.
Mm.
It was extremely regrettable because that man was doing his job and he was in police uniform and he was assaulted by various cadres of the UPND. And one of them was even identified by some of the people. They call him, I've forgotten what they call him. You know, President Hakainde Hichilema was elected into office on a platform of restoring the rule of law. And it's very, very surprising and disappointing that whenever you have these incidents of UPND cadres assaulting people or damaging property, just like it happened that time they were burying their colleague at Leopards Hill, where they broke a lot of vehicles in Bowden area. President Hakainde Hichilema made a promise that those people are going to be arrested, they will be apprehended. But up to now, no one has been apprehended. And those people who were involved in that fracas in Bowden at that time were more than 100. None of them has been arrested up to this day. And now that is where they draw their confidence to even start assaulting police officers in the manner they were doing, was it yesterday, where it was in broad daylight, people are watching, and you are assaulting this police officer who is in uniform. Zach, that is totally regrettable. And to me, it shows the levels of desperation on the part of the ruling party, because the ruling party know that they have lost the trust and confidence of the Zambian people, and their only option available is to intimidate the Zambian people so that we will not be able to speak the way we are speaking right now. And you've seen, Zach, even those Gen Z protesters, Jason Mwanza and his colleagues, who went and did a very peaceful protest at Freedom Statue there. The boy merely held a placard, which was reminding the president to say, you said you end road shedding. Where, what happened to this promise? You said you reduce the cost of living. What happened to this promise? He merely held a very peaceful placard. He did not insult anybody. He did not use inappropriate language whatsoever. So why was he arrested? And not only arrested, but arrested and kept in custody for 13 days. 13 days, Zach, 13 days, without being taken to court, without being given police bond. And then the police spokesperson, Rai Hamonga, actually went on to lie. He went on to lie when they were finally released to say they didn't meet the bail conditions. Those boys, Zach, those boys were apprehended on a Thursday. And on Friday, I went there. I even did, if you go to my Facebook page, I did a stream while at Central Police there. I was there when those boys were being formally warned and cautioned, and then when they were formally arrested. I was there. I was in the room for the CIO. The CIO, I even have his number in my phone. I was there. I was the one who was even advising them to say, on the one hand caution, don't give any statement, just give your details. I was there. And then while we were in that office, I was even communicating with the relatives of Jason, the relatives of that other gentleman, is it Mr. Lungu, and that little girl, to say, where are you? Make photocopies of your NRCs. And before they finished the process of arresting those boys, the sureties were outside the door with all the required documents. They were outside the door. And I found it regrettable that Rai Hamonga has now sunk so low that he's able to lie through his teeth and say, no, these people did not meet bail bond conditions. That's why they were not released. Those people were kept in custody to punish them for no good reason, because the police knew that even if they took that case to court, those boys would be acquitted. In fact, under a proper judicial system, they are not even supposed to undergo any trial. Hakainde Hichilema himself, who is now the president, he is on record going to that Freedom Statue in 2012 under the presidency of Mr. Michael Chufesata, and holding a poster protesting at the same freedom statue. And nobody arrested Hakainde Hichilema at that time. So what kind of hypocrisy does the president have for him about 12 years later to arrest a boy who is holding a similar placard at the same location that the president himself stood 12 years ago? What kind of hypocrisy, what kind of shamelessness does the president have to authorize such action? You understand? Because if those boys, Zach, if they were detained for maybe 4 hours or 5 hours, you can say, the president was not aware about it. Okay. But for them to be detained for 13 days, it means that the president was aware, because every political leader went to visit those boys at Central Police. I went there, Dr. Fred Membe went there, Edith Nawaki went there. A lot of political leaders went there. So there's no way that President Hakainde Hichilema would not have known that there are these Gen Z protesters who are languishing in police cells at Central Police without bond and without being taken to court, merely for reminding the president that he has not kept his promises on reducing the cost of living, on road shedding. Where is the offense there? So their strategy, Zach, is to intimidate us. But I've got a message for President Hakainde Hichilema. No matter how much you try, we shall not be intimidated. And the reason is simple, because Zambia is our country, and we are as equal citizens of this country as you are, Mr. President. We are not second-class citizens in our own country. We are equal citizens in this country. And for as long as we remain equal citizens in this country, we are going to challenge you where we feel you are stealing state resources. We are going to challenge you where you feel you are intimidating the opposition. We shall not cow down despite your efforts of intimidation.
Let me take another set of callers quickly. Good morning.
Good morning, Razak.
How are you? Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
You are talking to Musonda Vincent.
Musonda Vincent.
Kabwe Centro.
Kabwe Centro. Please go ahead, Mr. Vincent.
Thank you. Washon Tembo Warshana Wafiashi.
Tulive wina wa Msonda mwishano ko.
Inshallah Wafiashi, inshallah. Ya, uteko. Ana munendro la wina Wafiashi. Well explained. Ababan Pindarama, Varebu Mbama Pepin, Nation, Jima billion, not million. Mr. Mumone background. Number 2, number 2, number 2, number 8, number 2, you face them. Because they can't get money to the IMF. They have put themselves in problems. Now we come high cost of living, logistics, energy, it's a complicated concept of my department. So otherwise, this government has put us in problems. The big problem then Sarasara and then we take 2 years. Yamashiwa Muremona Nama. This government, Bashon Tembo Wombeshini, Satan to remove this government. This government here, they get in drama Matumba, they these people.
I thought that about Son.
Thank
you. Thank you very much. That's Sonda Vincent all the way from Kabwe. Thank you for calling. Let me take another one on 0955 221515. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
Yes, good morning.
Thank you. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
This is from Casamora calling in Kendele in Laricon.
Casamora.
Yes. Mr. President Tembo, morning.
Good morning, Mr. Kasamura.
Yeah, I totally disagree with you, President Tembo. Because I've seen massive improvement in UPND government. As I'm talking right now, I'm a marketeer at DC market. We are working peacefully compared to as we are working with this previous government. We are not victimized in the market. We are enjoying our services with this government which is abroad. As now, when things are market, now that things up with our madam, Naganiza Tingareva put in a working government. Because it's a so Tinagambizana, Tinagurizana, Tizankara 9.
vakaliko vadokta vakakaile vosi vana savasiyakabvini ayamitira tinzerero.
Zikomo
Again,
kwambiri.
the other thing,
Eh,
Mr. John Tembo, I'm
eh.
challenging you. Even now, even tomorrow, I can come and pick me. I go and show you where development you have seen under UPND government. There are places where since government have got independence, there's no schools which have been built. Under all these governments, these have been passed. But under UPN government, there's Munga Primary School which have been built under CDF. It's there seeable. I'm challenging you, President Tembo. We go and see it with your naked eyes. I rest my case.
Thank you very much for coming. Let me quickly take another one on 015. That's the number you're calling us on if you'd like to be a part of this conversation. Remember, our guest this morning on today's Tuesday edition of The Burning Issue is Mr. Sean Tembo, President of Patriots for Economic Progress, PEP. Now, I'll let you respond. In fact, looking at our time schedule, we will take just a few more calls. Let me take this one, then we begin concluding. Good morning, Dr. Proud.
Zaki, that is Dr. Proud from Garden.
You're welcome.
For example, Bashoni Tembo, you are dreaming now. Sorry to say like this. To say about President by Congo and drama, you can't see the development. Including energy sector, Zaki, position batenga ka video ka janeze kukamba kuri bakapara bebe batukanira ku ba president. Those are fake baba. Opposition simu zatenga ma point paka video kanga. So Bashoni Tembo, go to Home Affairs. There is this vehicle under CDF. Time we have a kampion munagura ko mamoto kai. There is a constituency mamoto ka monitoring ya CDF 156 vehicle. Mambula saya. Bagura ziko yonse. You can't see go to Boma where we get the NRC party by DC Barossa Zulu. Pa post office post pa jwana paka tama go to road coming to Emma there is this Makish Road from Fairview Vanapanga Ndola Highway Vapanga. These are sensible where Balungu Banaku come back to Copper Belt headquarters kwesu. Takwaria Road. Go to Eastern. Go to Eastern. There's no market where Mr. Lungu come from Baba. Put him up in. But Bakari Kugurisa Mutemba. UPND Nakamba Kutimanga my chips. Balance has was my chips balance. Apangiwa. Go to market. Kwa menili kuno ku city market kwa mandevu kuja kumasauko baleta majense kuti bantu walungu na basata wanaenda ku Brazil na bana wakwi kuja banaka wanatinga zero munaikuuza ba mageti ati gula jense weka hiyo pesa mtu mmoja hasa pa today kumasauka they are trading with one genset has this regular fuel ni plan ya ba HH yonse ni kuenda kwanza kwa ba HH kunaleta kitukuko. You Shoni Tembo just so PF vana kumenya mutauni bintu vili pafupi zani kuyamba kuna mandrama zamene ukamba kuti bagurobinga ndrama vana kumenya mutauni. You even mentioned the person. Why are you not swinging him? You are near the left dead. Musuinge kabiri muntu ana kumenya osasagira ndrama zamene sunaone.
Zikomo about Proud. Yeah. Let's hear you react to those. Yeah.
Yeah. Apart from Dr. Proud, of course,
Yeah.
the general sentiments on the ground is people are hungry and they have no hope in terms of the economy improving under the current regime. And under these circumstances, I've got no doubt in my mind, Zach, that the only solution is to ensure that in 2026, the UPND government and President Hakainde Hichilema are retired in the national interest so that we can turn this chapter. Dr. Proud tried to argue to say there are some projects here. There's Makishi Road, there's Munga Primary School. The bottom line is that when you compare the amount of money borrowed, $10.7 billion. For the record, Zach, the PF in terms of foreign debt, they found foreign debt from the UPND, from the MMD rather, it was at about $4 billion. And they pushed it to about $11 billion. That's a net amount of about $7 billion. You understand? And then for domestic debt, the PF found domestic debt at about 40 billion kwacha, and they pushed it to 89.5 billion kwacha. You understand? So if you convert that amount using, let's say, an average exchange rate, standard exchange rate of about 26 kwacha to the dollar, which is what I used in the previous analysis, it comes to 1 billion dollars. You add to the 7 billion, that's 8 billion. The bottom line, Zach, is that in my view, the UPND have borrowed more in 3 years than the PF borrowed in 10 years. The net borrowing, not what the total was, including what was there when the MMD left, but the net borrowing. The UPND with their 10.7 billion is far higher than what the PF borrowed, because even domestic arrears, the PF left domestic arrears at about 18.5 billion kwacha. And when they took over office, domestic arrears was around 4 to 5 billion kwacha. So they added about 13.5, let's say 14. When you convert that into dollars, it's about, let's say, $600 million. So total, the PF borrowed about $9 billion in total, compared to the $10.7 billion that the UPND have borrowed. Now, Zach, I would want to challenge you, as well as all the listeners out there. When you look at the infrastructure development that the PF did, the roads, the universities, the airports, can you compare to the infrastructure that the UPND are claiming to have done? Marod Sakira, no, apo pamakisha, apo pakona, apo UPND wanachita, no, Kurimunga primary school, PF infrastructure, wherever you look, you see it. They changed the face of Lusaka, literally changed the face of Lusaka. To ma township road, to ma township ya metezo yopa kuenda mwajimuri magravel roads, they were all tarred. You understand? So the bottom line is that for a government which has borrowed more than the PF, their infrastructure development is far smaller compared to what the PF did. So the question comes down to, what have they done with the money? And I keep telling the people, the answer is in the Financial Intelligence Center Trends Report. When you see figures of 44 billion kwacha being externalized, being stolen and taken out of the country, the question you should ask yourselves is, nindani wamenya anga bendarama zonse ezi? Vashon Tembo wangakwanise kubandarama izazachichosakuti. Zaka anga bendarama zonse izazachichosakuti. The only people who can steal 44 billion kwacha and take it out of the country is President Hakainde Hichilema and his government, because they are the ones who are controlling the coffers of the state.
And do you want to react to Kasomola?
Kasomola, his point was that there's Munga Primary School, which was built.
And also that, there is peace in markets, is working well, and that the benefits are actually prompting him and the family and the wife to have more children now.
Yeah, maybe we should pose a question to Mr. Kasomola and get his reaction to that police officer who was beaten to a pulp along Freedom Way by UPND cadres at Kurima Tower. What is his comment about that? Because, peace, Zach, when you talk about peace, it shouldn't be, you shouldn't consider there being peace because there's peace for you. You understand? It should be peace because everyone is living peacefully. Probably Mr. Kasomora is a registered UPND member. So his chances of being harassed by his fellow UPND is very minimal, very unlikely. But the question is, if those sentiments were coming from, let's say, a PF member or a PEP member, and they are testifying to say, muno market chitingara chabe bwino na manzatu wa UPND, then it can carry more weight. But that testimony coming from a UPND member doesn't mean anything. Just about 3 months ago, Zach, there was a big riot in Wapula. That was Wapula, at a market in Wapula. And the source of that market is because UPND cadres were harassing, not once, not twice, but on a consistent basis. They were harassing people in the market who were perceived to belong to other political parties. And there was a big riot that came out of that. That was in Wapula. I've just forgotten the town. So when you talk about peace, of course, the UPND cadres and their members, and they are living peacefully because they are in power. But the question is, are we living peacefully ourselves who are opposing the UPND? The answer is a definite no. The answer is a definite no. And the evidence is there to show for it. It's just like when you talk about economic development. Every time President Hakainde Hichilema addresses the media, he always argues that the economy is doing very well. The economy is doing very well. You understand? The question, which economy are you talking about, Mr. President? Are you talking about your personal economy? Are you talking about how your personal bank account has grown? Or you're talking about the Zambian people, the economy of the Zambian people? Because when you're president, you're surrounded by your ministers. So economy. Economy of President. The economy goes beyond the pot berries of your ministers, Mr. President. It goes beyond Mbovu Zama advisors one. The economy is about how people are living in Makombo. Take a walk. Just take a walk. You know, uzapeza people azimai apanga vitumbua kuseni, apanga vitumbua vambiri, dishi full, vatantika. And by the end of the day, vagurisako che viviri, nishivilipo 200 vitumbua. Previously, when there was liquidity in the economy, azapanga vitumbua visirira pamuliro. Apanga uku vantu vagula. Apanga uku vantu vagula. Manje apanga vitumbua full dish. By the end of the day, vagulapo che viviri all of it. It shows you that there's no liquidity in the economy. There is no liquidity in the economy. And that should be a source of worry. And when you ask, why is there no liquidity? The answer comes down to the 2025 national budget. You've got domestic arrears, which have increased from 18.5 billion when they took over office to 78.9 billion at present. You know, Zach, if you give me a few minutes, the way domestic arrears operate is, if I supply beans to Chongwe Boarding Secondary School, nangene sama ka 1 million go there, and I bill the government maybe 2 million. There's a profit of 1 million there, and government doesn't pay me. It means that my workers will not be paid. It means that na wewe vanshito waja marenti kumanyumba kuja swazalipira. Landlord na eve since kanabwere karenti, it means that kandarama ke zofuniko tumina ko mwana ku boarding because anatenge rent. Mwana uja ku boarding kandarama kaja kafora yozofuniko endo gulako sugar paka shop. Ija sugar sizaguliwa because watate wake swana mutumire ndarama. Uja waka shop uja ezofanga ati hapa nikagulisako sugar hii nizaendo shitako 1 2 3 vija shitik. So it has a ripple effect, very huge ripple effect. If I'm paid, I supplied beans to Chongwe Boarding, I'm paid ka 2 million kaja, I will be liquid. First of all, nzafanga papitantawe no diako kachiboni nigureko kachiboni nzapeleka ko ndarama mka butchery waka butchery kaja business ya picking ako. You spend, aendo lipira ko rent, aendo gula ko malash, aendo shitako cha. So the overall impact, Zach, which leads to my conclusion that there is a lot of incompetence at the Ministry of Finance. Because if the Ministry of Finance was run on a competent basis, they would understand this basic principle of the ripple effect of not paying suppliers of goods and services in the economy. They would understand this ripple effect. And the biggest reason why the economy is underperforming, in my view, is because of these two factors: the huge increment in domestic arrears and the huge increment in domestic debt. You are wiping out all the available financing from financial institutions, and then you are not paying your suppliers of goods and services. Mu economy muli bendaram, but when Hakainde na wanzake vatenga mabilioni vapereka outside the country. And when it is reported by FICI, they want to make shallow arguments. No this, no that. Account for this money going out of the country. Ndani wamenapeleka. Under the previous regime, President Hakainde Hichilema, when he was in opposition, he was challenging FICI and challenging government to say, investigate these reports reported in the FICI report. That's what he always used to do. He would jump from one radio station to the other, demanding that the government should apprehend the people listed in the fake report. What is his position today? Why can't they take action? Why can't law enforcement agencies take action against the culprits in the fake report? 44 billion out of the country. Why can't they take action? The answer to that, Zach, is simple. They can't take action against themselves.
Mr. Sean Tembo, President of the Patriots for Economic Progress, I would like to thank you so much for coming today. Unless you have a minute to make your own conclusion.
Thank you, Zach. It's always a pleasure to share our sentiments with the Zambian people. I just want to make an appeal to all the listeners out there that this country has been destroyed by these colleagues of ours who are in office. It has been destroyed. And we cannot give up on this country because we don't have any other country to go to. Some of us have stayed out of Zambia for a prolonged period of time. And we know when you're in a foreign country, you can be successful, you can be what, but you will never be as happy as when you're at home. So there's no option but to make Zambia a better place. There's no option but to redeem this country in 2026. And redeeming this country is not going to be a job of political leaders like Mr. Sean Tembo alone. No. It requires the active participation of each and every citizen. Us political leaders are merely tools to achieve the objectives of the wishes of the Zambian people. We deliver on what the aspirations of the people are. So if the people are serious about regime change in 2026, they need to work towards that. They need to contribute in one way or the other. That contribution has to be in the form of a voice. If you just keep quiet in your house and wish there can be regime change, it will never come. You can contribute by your voice. You can speak and speak strongly about the things you are not happy about. Speak out. You are a Zambian. You are entitled to express yourself. So the contribution can be in the form of a voice. It can be in the form of mobilizing the people around you. If you have the personality, you spread the message. Apa vintu sivili bwino aba bantu bakongola ndalama but vamene machita nazo ndalama sivioneka tivafendezeko pambali mu 2026. You can help with that aspect of it. You can help financially. In 2011 when Michael Sata was running PF, most of the regalia, it was people making that regalia themselves. So you want to contribute to regime change, do something. Get some t-shirts, make regalia for yourselves. So that when we say there's a rally, you don't have to come and expect to be given regalia because we don't have the money. We are willing to sacrifice and effect regime change, but we don't have the money. We need to effect the change together with your contribution. That is my message to the Zambian people.
Thank you once again for coming. I can only wish you and the Patriots for Economic Progress all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, listeners, that's what we had for you today on our Tuesday edition of The Burning Issue here on 5FM Radio, also live on Tuta FM in Mansa, and also live on Spice FM on 91.1 in Kabwe Central Province. We'll certainly be back next week, Tuesday, for yet another Tuesday edition, but do make a date with us this Thursday for yet another Thursday edition of The Burning Issue. From us all is take care of yourselves and remember to take care of each other as well. Bye-bye.
Tune in next week for another